Radhika.
Thank
So,
you.
warm welcome to Aspire for Her again.
Thank you, and it's good to be back with you guys again.
Thank you, Radhika. First, without doing anything more, we thought that we would actually launch your book
There we go.
on the Aspire for Her portal. So, I have my copy,
And I have
you
my
have
copy.
yours.
I have a massive copy.
Yes.
There we go.
The name of the book is Limitless. And there's this beautiful infinity sign.
Yes.
And the book feels so beautiful. I just got my copy yesterday and I couldn't stop reading it. So congratulations on the book, Radhika.
Thank you, and I'm glad you started reading it, and I hope lots of you guys read it.
Absolutely, they will.
Okay, let me put
So,
this guy here.
I had a lot of questions from all your fans at Aspire for Her, and all of them got nicely typed up and sent across to me, and then I read the book.
And then all the questions
and
came.
all the questions vanished. I said, I'm not going to ask any of these questions because now I've read the book and I know a lot more about your journey. And I think you took a lot of care not to repeat some of the stories from your past, and a lot of new facets of Radhika Gupta really came out in the book.
And that was very conscious. I think, people, and what happens with anybody is, I feel that, you do a piece of content, you do something like Girl with a Broken Neck, and people associate you with one story.
Yes.
But there's much more to it. And that one story has become popular, but each one of us is more than one story. I think we all grow, we all evolve. And also, I was very clear that Limitless is not my autobiography. I am far too young to write one, and I haven't done enough to write one, in my view. It was a way to recount experiences, and it was a way to share lessons, hopefully in a lighter and funner vein. But it was just an experience sharing. It was a collection of experiences and ideas, but it was definitely not a memoir or autobiography.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, I felt the same way, that it was just one experience after the other, and slices of life really presenting itself very beautifully in a very easy to read fashion. So if you haven't yet booked your copy, please do buy a copy of Limitless. We've actually got our new book club, and two of the members of our book club, they answered some of the questions in our first book club meeting, and we promised them that we are going to get self-signed copies of the book for them.
Oh, fab.
So you have to sign that
Which
off,
I will.
For our two winners, and we will hand that over to them. Coming to the book, Radhika, your book starts in a rather dramatic pause, right? And you talk about the time when you had 7 rejections and you were about to jump off a 21-story building. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think that's probably the story that is well known. And while I haven't repeated content, I started the book with that because I guess the first theme I wanted to talk about is probably the toughest one, which is rejection. When I did the talk, I got a lot of people writing to me stories of rejection. And I guess one of my learnings, which is the chapter title there, is rejection is not out of the syllabus. In fact, I believe in India it's guaranteed to be a part of the syllabus because we are such a large country and such a large population. So how do you rationalize rejection? How do you make sense of rejection? I was very clear that that was sort of the first theme that I wanted to attack. And in a 15-minute talk, I couldn't explain it enough. So I said, maybe that's the first thing I want to sort of talk through. And 15, 20 years later, look at my own emotions with respect to rejection and how I felt about it.
Oh, that's an amazing start, and I think no one talks about it enough because failure is also not celebrated in our country.
Yeah, it is. It isn't. In fact, I think this conversation is happening on LinkedIn also, and I did a mental health campaign for LinkedIn as an influencer where I said that all of us use social media platforms to talk about our successes.
Yes.
So you see posts about, I won this award, or I got this promotion at work, or etc., etc. But I have found in the last few years of writing content that when I share my bad days, when I share my tough days, when I share some of the frustrations, you actually get a lot more sort of support, engagement, because how many times are people going to congratulate you, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think sharing of failure, sharing of frustration is extremely important. I mean, I've had conversations with women where they ask me questions like, do you ever have a bad day? Of course you have a bad day. Everyone has a bad day. And everyone has probably one bad day a month.
Right.
And it's okay to realize that life doesn't need to, you don't always need to have it together in any case.
Absolutely. And that's really true for, I think, all of us. And we mentioned that at Aspire for Her multiple times, that one of the biggest life skills that we want our members to have is resilience.
Yeah.
How to bounce back from a bad day.
Yeah.
And, you've also mentioned that in the book. You actually mentioned Teflon, and you said that that's the sort of resilience that we want people to have. The rejection should not sort of define you in any way, and should not get you down.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, and what would you like our young minds to think about when they're going through a bad patch and rejection after rejection. I also feel sometimes I worry about the fact that how will I manage rejections, because I just do I have enough resilience within myself? How do we sort of bolster ourselves up?
I think resilience is it's a beautiful theme, because I also think in the times that we live in, we can be very short term.
Yes.
We watch 5-second ads on YouTube and then we want to say skip the ad. Um, you know, too often in our careers, and I've written about my early career journey, we want to give up on a job.
Yes.
We want to give up on, a person in our team or anything. We just want to give up, and we give up too early. And, one of my favorite poems is called Don't Quit, which I quote in this book. And I think it's important not to give up too early. And so resilience is, I have a if you see behind this background, there's actually a painting of Vincent van Gogh, Starry Night, which is my favorite painting of all time. And he has some beautiful lines about resilience, which I have written about in the book. Incidentally, today, I think a 22-year-old kid, he'd read the book, and I think those Van Gogh lines really, and so he picked up that theme of resilience, and he sent me a pair of socks with Starry Night on them. He's like, these are my resilient socks, and I've come wearing them. So I think resilience is a very important theme, because, too often, and I've made this mistake, we give up too early.
Right.
Careers need time, jobs need time. Nothing is perfect on day one. I keep telling my team, even with the bosses, when you start, things will not be perfect. You will argue with your boss. If you're on a border, there will be thodi takrar to hogi. That is reality of life. But don't give up so soon. And it's not just rejection. I mean, don't give up on rejection. Don't give up on an unpleasant environment. Don't give up so soon. And I feel today, by the way, there's a lot of advice telling young people to give up. Oh, boss said something to you, company culture is bad. Give up. One increment didn't happen, something else, give up. Great careers, great journeys are a product of difficulty. And you have to continue.
This is such a wonderful line, that great journeys are a product of difficulty, and never ever give up is something that we all tell everyone that aspires for her, not just necessarily for the context that you mentioned, but there are so many other contexts, right?
Oh, it could be a personal context, but resilience is,
work, and I have my family to take care of, and it's just too overwhelming, and let me just give up.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
That's what we always tell
The Van Gogh line is, don't put down your pencil.
Don't put down your pencil.
Keep drawing. Keep drawing. Keep drawing.
Absolutely. And in that context of resilience, I want to also bring in the element of a long journey and the risks that one needs to take. And you've likened a career more to an equity stock than to a bond. And the banker in me really sort of liked that example very much, that treat your career like a stock, because in a bond, the upside is limited. So talk a little bit about that, the risk that you've taken, and how did that work out?
And I think risk is interesting in India, right? On one era, we're living in an era where Shark Tank has gotten super popular.
Yes.
People are talking about unicorns, people are starting up businesses, and yet you're living in an era, on the other hand, where people are scared to move departments, still worried about a permanent job, still scared to forget startup. And I don't think, by the way, one of the things I've talked, risk has degrees, right? And a startup is not everyone's answer. But even working for a younger brand within your industry, working for an untried or untested boss, you have to do something to come out of the comfort zone, and there is a framework for it. It's not unbridled stupid risk. I think one of the things that the capital markets profession teaches you is that we are in the business of taking sensible risks.
Correct.
And earning returns. So I hope I also talk about sensible risks, because I also do understand the Indian context, and it is different from the Western context. Many of us come from middle class families, many of us have parents who worry, who put a lot into our education. I remember when I was quitting to start Forefront, there was a certain amount of anxiety, and that is natural, right? As a parent, all of us understand it. So I talk about risk in that context. So risk also has to be thoughtful risk, and that comes from being in the markets profession. But I really do agree. I don't think anyone should treat their career like a fixed deposit. I mean, the one thing you do, you can invest in safe instruments, but in your career you have to take a little bit of that, you have to take a little bit of that risk. You have to tell some story.
This is an amazing line which I am going to steal shamelessly from now on. So thank you for that, Radhika. Coming to the fact that you mentioned your parents were a little worried when you were coming back, and but when you were applying to schools abroad, you mentioned that there was somebody called Vijay Uncle who came and talked to you and said that why are you not applying to the Ivy Leagues? Why are you sort of playing it? And we do understand that in the India that we all grew up in, you are much younger than me, but we did have those concerns about how is the family going to afford that education, and therefore you probably decided to hold yourself back. And one of the points that you make is about really ambition and aspiration and the 3 A's, right? The 3A model. So talk a little bit about how that changed your life, because I think, and the program that Radhika went for, guys, and I must say this because I did some research on it earlier on, this is one of the best programs in the world offered by Wharton. It's a Jerome Fisher program, right? And it combines management and technology, the two hottest tracks in the world, and only a very, very few select students across the world can actually get into it. So you finally got in, but you were thinking of not applying at all.
Yeah, and I think we're all conditioned in some way to think that way, right? I mean, the traditional line has been, jitni chadar hai utne paon philao. I think many of us have heard this, and this is something I heard a lot in the north. And perhaps the reason I also mentioned Vijay Uncle in that book, and readers will read that, is that sometimes a little spark tells you about the power of ambition. And also, we talked about risk. I mean, this is a case where downsides are very low. What's the worst that you can do if you apply? You'll hear a no. So I think ambition is very, very important. And I think many of us, at least my own experience tells me that, I've made it to lists and got experiences that when you look from afar, you're like, there's no way that's going to happen. Like, there's no way that's going to happen. But when you think that big, it actually happens.
Absolutely. And I'm going to take heart to what Radhika is also saying, and I hope that all our listeners listening in will also feel the same way. When you really truly think that you can touch the sky,
at least you'll get somewhere.
At least you'll get somewhere.
At least you'll get somewhere.
That's the way I think about Aspire for her, because it is a daunting task to change the trajectory of the country's ecosystem, to change the trajectory of the dipping workforce participation for women. And it's not for 1 or 2 years. This has been happening for 15 years.
Yeah, it's not, you've not taken an, but the thing is, someone told me this in the context of Edelweiss Mutual Fund only, when we were, I think, a 36 or 31 rank thing. If you think like number 1, you probably will get to 10 or 15. But if you think like number 36, you'll actually end up at 40.
Absolutely.
Because you'll hire that way, you'll behave that way, your body language will become defensive.
Right.
And you don't want that to happen. You want to carry the body language, the mindset, the thinking of a winner.
Absolutely. And that's true really for all of us, I think, to take to heart. So if there is even a spark that is in your head and you want to do something dramatic, something truly, truly ambitious, audacious, go for it. The downside in most cases will be very, very limited. So talking about that, Radhika, I wanted to talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial stint.
Yeah.
You know that we have a fantastic community at Aspire for Her called Entrepreneurial. Very recently we got honorable mention by Mr. Amitabh Bachchan in the 1,000th episode of Kaun Banega Crorepati.
Fantastic.
So we got very lucky. Yes.
That is high aspirations. There you go.
Absolutely, and we didn't expect it. But right after hearing that, I think women from across the country, they signed up for Entrepreneurial, and we were finding women from tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 locations, and they were getting angry with us because in the drop-down menu that we had created, the names of their towns were not there.
Wow.
So we stood awake one entire night and we put 750 towns so that the Darbhangas and the Kunurs and all of that, and people, they didn't like putting others. They said, we want
We're not others.
We're not others.
We have an identity.
Absolutely. So about your journey as an entrepreneur, Radhika. Tell us a little more. You started on your college dorm selling Indian food?
Yeah, so my first business was out of my college dorm selling Indian food. And that was done on a lark, and of course the full story is in the book. And then my second business was, of course, Forefront Capital. I don't come from a business family in any shape or form. In fact, as I say in the book, my father worked in the government, my mother has been in the education field. So for us, it was either public sector or private sector. I mean, private sector mein jo bifurcations hote hain na, entrepreneurship, this, that, there was none of that growing up. And I believe entrepreneurship is a great thing. I think for me, it taught me something about ownership, something about humility, because, you know, when you work with big brands, you often forget how much the brand adds to you.
Yes.
But when you work as an entrepreneur, or even with a younger business, like I did with this one, it's all you.
Absolutely.
And I think that is incredible. So, you know, a stint in entrepreneurship is important. I also will say though, entrepreneurship, I also talk about selling the business in this. I think entrepreneurship is not a state of employment, it's a state of mind. So you can think, you can carry the good aspects of entrepreneurship into a job that you're doing. You can be resourceful, you can have high ownership, you can be agile. This is what makes a startup what it is. So I still believe that at 80,000 crores, 85,000 crores, we are a startup in DNA here. And that's what I'd like us to continue to be.
Sort of like an every day is a day one sort
Yeah,
of.
every day is a day one. There's still a hunger for learning. You know, I've said in my last annual review, and the last year was a great financial year for us, that my biggest fear is.
Thank you. And that's, I think, again, a lovely takeaway for all our listeners listening in at LinkedIn and on Zoom and everywhere else at Aspire for Her. There was another theme that I wanted to ask you on, and that's the concept of G that you mentioned. And you also mentioned that your favorite character is the Cheshire Cat.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this part of your personality and this part of your experiences.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm hearing about Limitless, and you realize, is that there are strange references. You know, there's a Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, and you know, there's examples of Napoleon, and there's Tom and Jerry,
right, yes.
who we are all very familiar with, and there's Van Gogh. But there's also a lot of you know, Bollywood.
A lot of Bollywood.
Yes, yeah, there are a lot of examples from films, and I think two things I'll say is, one is I use and tell stories of things that are close to me. You will see there's no sports example in my book because I don't understand sports. And I think we should express ourselves in what is natural to us. The second thing that I think is important, which is, you know, it's unrelated to your question but related, and it's about the film examples, is that I think narratives have to be, and our stories have to be Indian.
Right.
You know, the Indian woman or the Indian man or the young Indian is building a career in a country that is very different from our Western counterparts. with a social background that is also very different, with parents that are very different. So, Sharma ji ka beta, who I talk about, or beti, is a very Indian, you know, it's an Indian reality, and you know, we know that, which is why I think a lot of my references are very Indian, and I wanted Limitless to be an Indian story, because I think our stories have to be told our way with our narrative.
That's beautiful. And you know, just before this, I was actually congratulating Radhika on another first in her life. So she's going to have her first baby in the month of July. So
Yes, early July.
congratulations, Radhika.
Thank you.
It is a fantastic journey, and you know, I'm sure you'll enjoy every step of the way. But this is another theme that we discussed, right? That these stories are never told, and pregnancies, especially in the Indian corporate context, are never really celebrated and never really talked about. In fact, if at all, then people sort of feel worried about the fact, you know, whether the person, the woman who's coming back into the workforce, is she going to be all in? Is she going to be distracted? And you know, this is a sad reality of today's life, and probably one of the major contributors to the sort of declining statistics that we see, right? What do you think about that, and what do you want to say to our viewers?
Which is why I've been reasonably actually public about pregnancy, because one, it's a beautiful phase. Two is, I have to share this, that when I think in October I found out that I was expecting, like many people, like many women in my situation, I was also stuck with this, oh, the world is going to end kind of thing. You know, I won't be able to work, I won't be able to do X, Y, Z, and I had just become sort of vice chair of Amphi. I knew that Limitless was going to release. We're also doing a new home. There are a bunch of personal projects. You know, later World Economic Forum came up, and so I couldn't have. This was a really busy time in life, and you know, then I started Googling around, and you laugh at me. So I was reading stories of Marissa Mayer and other CEOs. I was like, are there other CEOs who were pregnant when they were, you know? And by the way, those stories helped me. Right. So when I learned that, you know, in your tricky times, the power of storytelling and examples is important. And then 7 months later, as I've gone through this, I realized, dude, everything happens. Everything just works out. If you, and I talk about honest conversations at the workplace, if you are honest with people around you, with your bosses, with who you work with, if you share and ask for help honestly, and if you take off the burden of being perfect all the time, which I also talk about later in the book, you will get through things, and literally everything has happened. It's not happened perfectly, but it has happened. And that's why I felt over the last 2-3 months, as I settled into this, it was also important to share that experience, which is why I started talking about it around Women's Day, and I, you know, continued to talk. And just last week, you know, someone who's very senior in a company came to me and said, she's like, so you had a late stage pregnancy, were you not stressed on how you'd get through it, because this is bothering me? And I'm glad I read something that you posted. And so I'm saying, if a conversation about Marissa Mayer, you know, a story about her helped me, hopefully a few of us talking about this will help others and contribute positively to this workforce movement, because this is the single biggest thing that causes dropout and so many of the issues. And I don't think we need to go prove our commitment to anyone. You know, I've worked very hard through my career, and I don't think I need to prove my commitment to my work. And by the way, I don't think 1, 2, 3 months or whatever months of maternity leave in a 30-year career take away from my commitment. I have a colleague who's nurse, you know, who's working with his father, and he's working from home for a couple of months because his father is unwell. This happens in all of our lives. So why do we make a big deal about my lack of commitment or someone else's lack of commitment here?
Absolutely. And this is the mindset that we try to change every day. And you know, and this is cannot be a better example than, you know, someone who's expecting a baby in the next couple of months to come and say, hey, listen, in a long 30-year-old career, this is actually nothing. But on a lighter note, Radhika, I must tell you that this gives bragging rights for life. So please do not give up on that, and ensure that you keep bragging about it.
Seriously.
Because there are some things which your husband will not be able to do, and this is one of them.
Exactly.
So not to forget that. Coming to your husband, I found him coming in bits and pieces in the
Yeah.
book, and very beautifully so. And he is the marathon runner, but more importantly, he saved your life on the 21st floor story. And I read an HBR article a few years ago which said that women who wish to have great careers
Huh.
should either have a super supportive spouse or none at all. Do you agree with that?
Oh, look, I think a supportive partner helps for both men and women. In the case of women, maybe a little more. In the case of Indian women, I think a supportive partner and a good ecosystem in terms of in-laws and family is incredible. I've been very fortunate, to have one, because I think an individual goes through a lot in life, and not just pregnancy. You have up days, you have down days, you have so much chaos that goes on in life. Nalin and I are fortunate and unfortunate in that we have been business partners together. We work in the same industry. The good part about that is that you understand each other. So, if you're working late because it's a really rough market run, then you don't ask each other questions about why that happens. But there's a little lack of work-life balance at home because you're always talking shop. I mean, it just is not avoiding. But, I find that it's very interesting that you've asked this question, because a lot of young women write to me, and sometimes they do these Zoom sessions with me. And believe it or not, and they don't know me, right, personally. But one of the most common questions they ask for is, what should I look in a husband?
Yeah.
So it is in the top of people's minds
Yeah.
that I'm thinking about getting married. What should I look for and what should I not look for? And I think look for a partner who's a genuine partner. Look for a partner where the values align.
Absolutely.
I think, financial values, values towards life, values towards who you want to be, and where the goals and ambitions align. And I think have those conversations
Early
up
on.
front
Absolutely.
with the partner and with the family.
Yeah.
Because romance is one part of it, but there's a life that you have to build together.
Absolutely. No, that's a beautiful, thought that we are leaving you with, and it's true. I mean, I know we're going to complete 25 years of our marriage. And,
Wow, congratulations.
And I think, without that understanding and the respect for each other, which happened many, many years ago in school for us, I would never have reached this stage to say that, both our careers are equally important. And managing dual careers is difficult, and but both people need to have that respect for each other, and that's what you should look for. Really.
I remember when this World Economic Forum announcement happened, I think about a few weeks ago, I was having a conversation with my mother and my husband, and that the program will involve a lot of travel, and it will happen after the baby. And both of them were like, listen, go out and pursue your dreams completely. And he's like, I'll travel with you. I'll be there with the baby. My mom and mother-in-law were like, we'll be there. Go out and do everything, right? And I think that's what you need to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the smart thing to do in this case, and this is a practical tip, is that perhaps you should just figure that out a little before you take that momentous decision.
I agree.
Of getting married to somebody.
I agree. I mean, I have these, these are like, I've talked about tough office conversations in the book, but these are tough life conversations.
True.
That probably should be had early.
Should be had early on, absolutely. And before taking the step, absolutely. So, thank you for that. That's a wonderful nugget of wisdom there. One question, and then we'll move on to the rapid fire round. So, the one question that I want to ask you is, you have a lot of fans that aspire for her, and we get a lot of folks who want to come and join our community. So, here to all the viewers who are actually watching Radhika, personal invitation from both of us to come and join Aspire for Her. What do you think your message is to the people that aspire for her?
Look, I think communities are important, and I have to confess something. At the beginning of my career, I wasn't a big believer. And I wasn't a big believer because when I entered the workforce at a junior level, the world was quite close to 50-50. And then I've gotten older and I've realized the world is not so close to 50-50. And shared experiences and shared stories help. And over the last 2-3 years, I've actually made a proactive effort to join communities. Um, Not all of them are women's communities, but they are different communities, and they are communities like this. And the reason is also this, that, I think all of us need to grow personally. I'm someone who believes in personal growth and the power. And beyond a point, sitting in the same industry, doing the same thing, you do feel a sense of stagnation. So I joined a CEO forum a few years ago, which has been one of the best things I've done. And I remember during COVID, and I always feel the financial services industry lives in its own bubble. Uh, I remember talking to friends, and we feel that, oh, markets are down, things are bad. I remember talking to friends who were CEOs of hotels and hearing their stories.
Oh, yeah.
And believe me, they had it much tougher than we did.
Correct.
And I just felt it gave me such a sense of perspective. And there's so many other stories. So I think communities are very important. I also think sometimes, and now this is a woman thing, I also think sometimes as women, we don't make enough of an effort to invest in networks and
Correct.
communities.
Correct.
I talk about this in the book also, because we think, ho jayega, I have to be very busy being a good employee. But this also adds, by the way, your network also adds to your day job. So don't sacrifice what is important because something else urgent came in the way. And I don't think communities demand as much of our time as we think. So that's the other message I want to give. A lot of people don't go out and do this saying, I don't have time. It takes less time than watching whatever Bombay Begums on Netflix or whatever else people watch.
True. True, absolutely, absolutely. And in the days of COVID, like it's just been all virtual, so
Yeah.
therefore there's been very limited. And this is one of the few face-to-face sort of meetings that we are doing.
Yeah.
So this is also a first for us, where we're actually doing
Doing
a
a
LinkedIn
face-to-face.
live, yeah, LinkedIn live.
It's my first LinkedIn live too, so I'm learning something.
Many firsts over here. So absolutely. So I think Radhika's message also very clear to all of us. Invest that time in networking because communities actually build networks and build you in so many different ways, not just confined to your little professional or your academic network. So, and we see that every day. We see that every day in our return to work community when people cheer each other on and they celebrate when somebody is getting a job. And it's a feeling of that, that there's a family behind you who's actually trying to do something. So we see a lot of that. So thank you for all those fantastic answers, Radhika. We know that there are a lot of answers flowing into Zoom, questions flowing into Zoom as well. We will take some of those maybe later, and we will request Radhika to respond to some of them from the book and outside.
I will.
So this setting wasn't really conducive to us seeing the questions and then answering. So we will bring that in. But our community wanted to know you a little better.
Sure.
So I'm just going to ask you some questions, rapid fire, and you cannot take too much of time to think about it.
And I will be rapid, and I will have fire.
Yes. So easy questions. Your favorite part of the book?
My favorite part of the book is the last chapter on self-confidence, and chapter 4, which recounts a lot of stories from my parents and on adaptability, because it really picks up from growing up. It's unique.
Fantastic. And you do talk a lot about adaptability.
Yeah,
yes,
I do.
Yes, and how learnability is more important than just growth.
Yeah.
Second question, your favorite movie?
Oh, I don't have a single favorite movie, but essentially everything that Yash Chopra made between like 1970 and 2000, like all that Lamhe Silsila, Kabhi Kabhi, all of that stuff, I really, really like.
So you love the sentimental,
poetic, romantic.
Poetic, romantic.
I'm also someone who loves words, so I loved the language of those movies. I loved the poetry. I remember all of that. So, and some of it is before I was born, but yeah, that's me.
And that's another very unique dimension to you, because typically finance and poetry and romance don't really go too well with each other, but somehow you manage to all make it blend.
Yeah, sometimes people expect a finance professional to be reading finance books, and I mean you can, but I like to read fiction, so I've always been a person of twin interests.
Right.
And I think it's cool. Look, Arundhati Bhattacharya told me she was a literature major. She headed the largest bank in the country. So maybe there's hope for some of us who like literature and English.
True, yes. So third question, in your long journey, there have been many difficult moments and you've spoken about some of them.
Yeah.
Something that you haven't mentioned in the book and you'd like to leave the audience with.
Something that I haven't mentioned. And, I think I've recounted so many things in the book outside of my fights with my little brother, which were very annoying, that I can't think of something.
And that tells you that the book truly is a mirror of your inner person.
I think
really
I've recounted.
shared a lot of it.
I think I've recounted quite a bit.
That's fantastic. Your favorite color?
Red.
Why?
I look, my walls are red. I mean,
I know, and you're wearing a shade of red.
I'm wearing like a still more decent shade of red, as my mother would call it. I love red. I think it's bright, it's happy, it's powerful, it's passionate.
So clearly,
it has personality.
It has personality.
It can be angry. It can mean so many things. It's got persona.
So clearly, Radhika does not look at red from a financial lens at all.
It's not. It also means losses, which but
which you do not like.
Yeah, which I don't like. But yes, outside of that.
Outside of that, and that's the sentimental Yash Chopra side of Radhika, which is actually coming in over here. Tell me a little more about. We talked about your movie. We talked about a color. Your favorite book.
I don't have a single favorite book, but I love international fiction. Okay, if I had to pick one, it would be To Kill a Mockingbird. I've read it many, many times in various stages of my life. And I've always felt that whether I read it at 11 or 12, whether I've read it at 37, 38, I've learned something new from that book. So I think it talks a lot about understanding human beings.
And you mentioned Atticus Finch also.
I have. That's been a very strong influence.
That is lovely. And if any of you haven't read To Kill a Mockingbird,
it's a great book, guys.
It's a great book.
It's a great book.
Yeah. Right after you finish reading Limitless,
please
I think you can read To Kill a Mockingbird after
this. It's a very good book.
Absolutely. Your favorite food?
Oh, okay. This is going to be really hard. I think it's pizza. I think I can eat pizza all day. And not any kind of pizza. So I'm particular about food. I grew up in Italy. I went to high school in Italy. And so the classic Italian margherita pizza. I mean, if I'm in a bad mood, then pizza pizza is usually, the other one, since I'm a North Indian, is stuffed parathas.
Fantastic. So pizzas and parathas for Radhika. If she's ever coming to your home for dinner,
you know what to make.
All right. Fantastic. And I just want to do a time check here. What's the time?
I can tell you the time. 5:50. We are well on time.
Oh, fantastic. We are well on time then. Fantastic. Then we can perhaps take a few questions.
Yeah, we can take a couple of questions.
Look at that, and we'll just probably see that. But last question from your side. One thought that you'd like to leave everyone with, before they read your book, and how do you want them to sort of treat your book? Do you want it like you know what I'm saying?
So, I want people to think of Limitless like a friend, a friend along your journey. And we all have different journeys and unique journeys. And this is not going to be new discoveries. So let me say that. But it's a friend sharing stories of one journey. And I hope some of these stories connect to you and your stories, and I hope you find some resonance in some of those stories. And once you do, I also hope that you share your story,
right?
So that more people share their story, and we just have real nice conversations. So I would like you to treat Limitless as a good friend you met on your journey.
That is such an amazing thought. like a good friend that you met in your journey. You're thinking of the book like a person,
Yeah.
and which carries a lot of yourself.
Yeah, like a warm, happy person who's just talking about their thoughts, their experiences. Maybe you'll share some back.
Absolutely. So that's what really Radhika is talking about. She is very, very active on social media, definitely on LinkedIn.
Yes.
So if you are on LinkedIn or any of the other media, I think she's very active on Twitter as well. So do share your stories. And we were just discussing some time back that there are folks who actually read about her, who do not know her personally, but they do share a lot of themselves.
Yeah, they do.
And that is where the slice of life really adds richness to also, Radhika's own trajectory. And that's such a beautiful thing, that the book should generate those conversations and should generate that friendship along the way. That is truly how a community behaves.
Exactly.
So your book is truly a community book, which is creating a sort of community of itself. So thank you so much. There are some questions which I have with me, so I'm going to ask you some of those questions. One is about women and money. Women have this very uncomfortable relationship with money. And here I'm talking to you as an AMC head and as someone who is, dealing with India's money markets very deeply. What would you tell women to do? Because most of them are not only not financially independent, but they do not also like to bother themselves with too much of finance in their minds and heads.
Go get financially independent, one. My mother told me, and she's a very educated woman, that if there's one thing she regrets is that she gave up a career too early and then she picked it up later. So be financially independent. And once you learn to earn your money, you're smart enough to invest it. So please don't outsource that job to anyone. And don't buy the nonsense that women are not about money, etc. It's really not that difficult, and a lot of help is out there.
Absolutely. I was just speaking to some folks today who have some very innovative ways of making women think about money very differently, so that this whole taking on this whole discomfort from the equation between women and money. The second question that we had from your fans out there is on mental health, and that's something that you've talked a lot about. So tell us how you think Indian workplaces and generally how people can approach mental health in a more proactive, in a more productive way.
I think we need to break down wall. I wrote a chapter in Limitless that said take off the cape in reference to CEOs. But I think we need to take off the capes and break down the walls and have much more open conversations in office and build relationships where we can have these discussions. My learning over COVID in running a large team is that mental health issues are real and they are rising. When you have a person in office who has a mental health challenge, you don't realize what it takes away from productivity and from the environment. So I think we need to work very hard to build an environment that is compassionate, where we can have those conversations, which is why I have been such a spokesperson for vulnerability. And I do believe that we can take care of mental health, we can be compassionate with people while being bloody aggressive with business. I do believe both of them can go hand in hand. I am competitive, I am aggressive, I want the best for my business. I am responsible to my investors, but I also think it needs to happen in a way that is good to people. And I think, by the way, as owners of companies or employees of companies, brands today, the youth also today connects to brands that are like that anyway, right? So that is my perspective.
No, that's a great thought, because we saw a lot of rise in mental health issues regarding during COVID. We also saw our entire Not Alone community of women who had lost their.
Because I think the best thing that can happen to you is to not be alone.
Absolutely.
Is to have someone.
I think that's the thought. That again, coming back to the fact that if you're not already part of a community, put your hand up for one. Because it just gives you back so much more.
It gives you energy, it gives you hope, it gives you a place to speak.
Absolutely.
I find it amazing the amount of mental health emails I get, and I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not even equipped to respond to them. but it tells you that people want to share.
Yeah. And
And perhaps my advice to them now will be join a community.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. So, and that's a it's a very tangible, it's a very easy step to take, and practical and pragmatic as well. It doesn't really require too much of effort
Nothing.
or anything at
Nothing.
all.
It's just inertia.
Absolutely, absolutely. So some of the other questions that our members had, and I'm going to ask one of them is, the attitude towards money in women in India and women outside our country is sometimes seen to be different. So what do you feel about that? Because you've operated in both the countries as a student and as a professional, and what do you feel about it?
Obviously we are some steps behind in India, but we're not that many steps behind. I think in India historically we have been very good savers and very good budget keepers as women. We haven't taken the step towards investing. By the way, I should tell you though, even globally, and I've worked in global financial services, at least in the US, representation of women in financial services, in investing, is very limited. The number of role models that you have is, so India is not much worse off than anyone else. All of us are in pretty bad shape. But I also think that it is changing. I'm actually really optimistic about the future, because I think the 18 to 22-year-old of today wants to earn, is aware that she has to invest, is at least studying options in a way that my generation or my mother's generation was not. So I think as the Indian woman gets more aspirational, which she certainly is, this is anyway changing.
Thank you for that. So you feel that the chasm is sort of reducing a bit?
It's reducing, and it's reducing slowly, but it is reducing. And it will continue to reduce. And look, women in money is a very far evolved step. India, forget men or women both, financial literacy has a long way to go as a nation.
Absolutely.
And women participation in the workforce has a long way to go as a nation. Now you bridge both of them together and you have a really long way to go as a nation. So it is a gradual journey.
And that is the $2.9 trillion that we're talking about in the Indian economy.
But I think at least people realize that women are important consumers. I mean, you just look, Nykaa was created out of catering to women consumers. There's so many businesses are tapping the
saving and investments and all of that. And some of them actually invested in Nykaa as their first investment.
There you go.
And it just was such a poetic sort of justice to the whole thing that happened.
No.
So absolutely. So here's hoping that all of you will take those steps, and all of us together will build that bridge, which will help us bridge that $2.9 trillion gap that's there in the Indian economy. Large number of zeros behind 2.9, but it's something that if all of us work together, and if we have role models like Radhika, that is not too difficult to get. So we have 3 questions for our viewers here, and Radhika, it's supposed to be a quiz on your life,
Okay.
Which is not there in the book.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask the first one. Maybe you can ask the next 2.
Okay.
So the first question is, Radhika was, and sorry,
You have to
forgot.
give me the questions.
I forgot. No, sorry.
You're going to ask the questions.
I'm going to ask the question. Let me ask the questions. But I forgot to also mention that all the winners of the quiz, if you write the right answers, all the winners of the quiz are also going to get a self-signed copy of the book by Radhika.
Yeah.
So that's the prize. So when you are writing into us, whether it's on LinkedIn or on Zoom, please also give your email ID. That way we'll know who you are and we'll quickly be able to get in touch with you. So fastest finger first. The first question is, we all know that Radhika was born not in India, but in Pakistan. Which city was she born in?
Ah, okay.
Okay, I can see a lot of smiles. I'm hoping that some of the answers are coming in. We're not able to see the screen right now, but I'm hoping that answers are coming in, and we'll give you 30 more seconds to do that. Second question, which I mentioned in my conversation a little earlier, Radhika went to UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, on a very special program. What was the name of that program?
Ah,
No Googling, guys. Fastest finger first.
interesting.
And just give us the answers in the next 30 seconds. Remember, one lucky winner out of this will get a self-signed copy of Limitless. Okay. And third question. And we'll have to ask Radhika the answer for this one because the first two we knew the answers.
You knew the
Yes,
answers
and this
too.
one I don't know the answer, so I'm going to ask her. What is Radhika's favorite flavor of ice cream?
Should guess.
Okay, guys, please keep guessing because if she gives the answer now, then it'll be a little bit of cheating. So please keep guessing. I am hoping that the answers are flowing through LinkedIn and through Zoom. And now we are going to ask Radhika Gupta
The answers to all
the
three.
answer to this very important question. The last one. We know the first two.
Obnoxious Belgian chocolate. Like,
Oh my God. Okay.
maybe it's a pregnancy thing. But yeah, I've always been you'll realize red, chocolate, there's a theme going on there.
I can see that, and you did talk about the strengths and weaknesses answer where you talk about dark chocolate.
There you
being my
go, there was a hint.
On that lovely note of Belgian chocolate, on that very sweet note, Radhika, thank you very much for doing this for us. Thank you very much for launching Limitless
Thank
on
you.
Aspire for Her. And we look forward to loads and loads of people reading the book. I can assure you it's a lovely experience, and also writing in because the book is like your friend. While you're at it, do continue to aspire for her. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. हो गया?
Okay. Arey wow, that's tiring.
Right on
Yeah.
time?
Wow.
Yes, Mehak, well done. I was getting scared. Why is Mehak not coming?
Exactly on time.
They just need
Okay.
Thank you so much. A warm welcome to everyone at Aspire for Her. It is my pride and privilege to be talking to someone truly special today, Radhika Gupta, and she has just published her first book. Now, how do I introduce Radhika? Should I talk about the fact that she is one of the youngest CEOs in the financial services industry? Should I talk about the fact that she shares the same list as Raghuram Rajan in the LinkedIn influencers list? Or should I talk about the fact that she went viral as the girl with the broken neck? But I think today I will talk about the fact that Radhika is one of the most